Hello everyone, welcome to our online English session. Our World Through English. That's the name of our 10th class English textbook. And our English textbook has 8 units. Those 8 units are designed thematically. Every unit specifies one theme. Now if we take the first unit is about personality development. So what is personality development? Why do we need personality development? And how to develop personality development? Before we answer these questions, let us try to understand how our journey is going to be like. Why? Because before we set out on our journey, let's try to understand the dynamics of our journey. The destination of a journey depends upon the belief system we start our journey with. I know that was quite a voluminous quotation, but my dear children, I want you to remember that quotation. The destination of our journey depends upon the value system or the belief system that we start our journey with. What are the beliefs that you carry with yourself when you set out on the journey? That is what is going to decide your destination. So, what is our destination? Let's try to define. Let us create a big goal. And what's that? That is acquisition of English language so that we can be a proficient user of it. That being our primary motive, the other goal is to score good grades in the English examination. Now, the English language is being tested in our examination in 2 papers, paper 1 and paper 2. Now, the paper 1 is more about our textbook. That's the reason why, my dear children, I recommend that whenever you sit for English class, see that your textbook is available. See that the textbook is with you. Now, the textual reading is very, very important. For instance, if we look at, I don't want to write it down because don't worry, we can send you slides about it. You are also already aware of the pattern of the question paper. In 8th class and 9th class also we have the same pattern of question paper. 9th class we have part 1, part 2, and in 10th class also we have part 1, part 2. So, in part 1, that is paper 1, is more about reading comprehension. Reading comprehension is for 15 marks. And this reading comprehension is also from our textbook. Whereas, the paper 2 reading comprehension are unseen passages. The text that would be given, the material that would be given in paper 2 is not necessarily from our textbook because they are unseen passages. Whereas in paper 1, whatever reading comprehension passages will be given, they'll definitely be given from our units, that is 7 units of our textbook. So, my dear children, reading the textbook is very, very, very important for all of us. Not just to score good marks, but for better understanding of the language and to gain a greater command over the language, textbook reading is very, very important. So, taking that into consideration, I recommend every one of you to keep a book handy. Now, let us go to our first unit. As we have already learnt, every unit is discussed or designed thematically. What is the theme of our first unit? The theme of our first unit is personality development. Yes, you are right. It is personality development. Now, I have a question to all of you. When I say personality, what personality am I referring to here? Am I referring to the personality of bodybuilders, the muscle strength? No, I am not referring to the physical personality of a person. When I say personality development, here I mean to talk about the set of characteristics, the set of qualities that you have picked up from different sources. See, that is what I really appreciate this unit. Why? The purpose of education is to enlighten. The purpose of education is to empower and to create employment. These are the three main objectives of education: enlightenment, empowerment, and employment. For this to happen, what is the first thing? Education should provide us enlightenment. And when do we become enlightened? We become enlightened when we know our faults, when we know our flaws. And how can we know ourselves? The best way to know ourselves is to examine our life, examine our behavior, examine our habits. Now, my dear children, put all these things together. What are the three things that I said? The first thing I said is behavior, how we behave. Then the set of habits we have picked up. The set of habits we have picked up, how we behave, and what are the values or principles that we abide by. These three things put together is called as a character of a person. This is how we define the character of a person: his behavior, his habits, his values. So now the personality development is going to empower our character, enrich our character. How? That's what we are going to learn in this lesson. So my dear students, without much further ado, let us start our lesson. Now, I want every one of you to look at the picture that will flash on the screen. My dear students, now you will notice that a picture will flash on your screen. For those who don't have a textbook with you, you can look at this picture. So this picture is called as face sheet. Again, this is not a novel concept to you. Right from our 6th standard, before we start a lesson, before every lesson we have this face sheet. Now, my dear students, I want you to focus on this face sheet. You see three different persons, right? You see two ladies and a man there. Now, among those three personalities, you can see by the attire, by the way she looks, there is an Indian and there is a lady and a man of European countries or foreigners who are non-Indians, right? Now, the first question is, who are these people? Have you ever seen these people? Of course, out of those three people, one is still alive. So have you ever watched that person on TV or in the newspaper or anywhere else? Give it a thought. Try to recollect your memory. Right. The three people that you see are, the first one, let us talk about the Indian. She is Sudha Chandran. Who's that lady? Sudha Chandran. And then you have a famous scientist. Who's that famous scientist? Stephen Hawking. The man that you see on the face sheet of our lesson is Stephen Hawking. And who's the third lady or the third person? The third person is Helen Keller. Helen Keller. Now, my dear children, before I go further, I'd like to give you one small bit of advice. What is that? In English language, though we write a letter twice, see here, we have written L twice, H-E-L-L-E-N, and here also we have written L twice, K-E-L-L-E-R. Though we write a letter twice, we read it only once. You shouldn't read it as Helen Keller. No, that's wrong. Then how should this be pronounced? That should be pronounced as Helen Keller. You should make a sound of only one letter. I hope you already know this. If not, from now on, please practice this. Don't say immediately. It's not immediately, it's immediately. Okay, don't stress. Of course, that we do in our native tongue. But here in English, my dear children, please refrain yourself from stressing the word just because it is written twice. Okay, now, so the pictures that we see on the face sheet of our first lesson are Sudha Chandran, Stephen Hawking and Helen Keller. Now my question is, why these pictures? Who are these people? Or what is in common in these three people? The first one is Sudha Chandran. Now, you can definitely take a pause. If you are watching a recorded audio or a recording of this video, you can take a pause and you can think for a while, who is this Sudha Chandran? Sudha Chandran is a very famous TV actress. She has acted in many TV serials in Tamil and in Hindi. She has also tried her luck in movies and has won many awards. And she is known as one of the greatest classical dancers of India. She is very, very proficient in Bharatanatyam. These are not the reasons why Sudha Chandran is famous for. There is one important thing that we all should know about Sudha Chandran, and that is Sudha Chandran has achieved all this. She became a famous TV actress. She went on to win a wonderful Nandi Award for her performance in a movie, and even till date she continues to perform her shows in the classical dance of Bharatanatyam despite a major accident which has amputated her leg. In an accident in somewhere in 1980s, Sudha Chandran lost her leg. People said that she should be stuck to the wheelchair. She can't perform like earlier. This is what the world told her. But what happened next is what you know. She did not confine herself to that chair. She got up and she did big things and she achieved big in life. That is what Sudha Chandran is. Then now let's come to Stephen Hawking. Now who is this Stephen Hawking? Stephen Hawking is a great scientist who has read the cosmos of our world or the universe. He has created many theories. A Brief History of Time. That's the book written by Stephen Hawking. No doubt. Sir, what is so special about Stephen Hawking? There are many other scientists. There are many other people who have read many other things like astronomy or to that matter any branch of science. Why are we discussing Stephen Hawking? We are discussing Stephen Hawking because at an age of 21 years, he suffered from ALS disease. And you know what ALS does to a person? Once a person suffers from ALS, no part of his body can be moved. You might have already watched that in the movie Upiri. But of course, in the movie Upiri, Nagarjuna lost the sensation of his body because of an accident. But Stephen Hawking, he suffered from a disease, not because of accident, but because of the disease. Slowly, one after the other, the body parts started getting numb. They started suffering the dystrophy. People said that his doctors told that he will not survive for more than 5 years. 5 years was the maximum lifespan that was given by the doctors to Stephen Hawking. But the marvel of life, the wonders of life is that he did not succumb to death like the doctors said within 5 years. He went on to live a life of legacy. He studied the stars, he studied the black holes, and then he created many things. Mark my words, please pay attention. He couldn't even move his hands. He couldn't move his legs. Despite such a big disability, he has grown to be a matchless scientist. That is the greatness of Stephen Hawking. Now, who is the third person? The third person is Helen Keller. Now, who is Helen Keller? You might have read about Helen Keller in your previous classes, right? Helen Keller is a very famous political activist. She is a great lecturer. But you know what? When she was just 18 months old, she suffered such a severe illness that doctors predicted she won't live. But somehow, luckily, she managed to survive that sickness, that fever. But that fever took a lot away from Helen Keller. Because of that fever, Helen Keller lost her vision, her sense of sound, her sense of sight, and she was dumb. She was a triple disabled person. She was deaf, she was dumb, and she was blind. Can you imagine how terrible the world would be, or how terrible for her it would be to express her needs? How can she convey her emotions? How can she convey her feelings? How can she convey her bare minimum necessities? Because at an age of 18 months, she lost all this. She haven't seen anything. But those triple disabilities did not stop Helen Keller from becoming what she wants to become. She went on to transform the world. That is one striking quality. If you ask me, sir, what is it that you find common in these three people, I would say that these three people have not only made a difference to their life, but they proved to others that nothing can stop us if we decide. Now, really, I feel it. It is in the moments of our decision making that our destiny is created. Please, that was a wonderful quotation, came spontaneously. Let us recollect it. It is in the moments of our decision making that our destiny is created. So they all decided. They all took great decisions. They did not succumb. Oh, I met with an accident, I lost a leg, so I'll be always in the crutches, I'll be carrying the crutches, I'll always be in the wheelchair. No, she didn't think like that. And when he suffered the ALS disease, he did not try to kill himself, or he did not think that, okay, I'm such a lame man that I can't even a muscle in my body, what would I do? No, they did not succumb to these kind of negative thoughts. They decided that they are going to make a difference to themselves, and in turn, when they were trying to make a difference to themselves, they have transformed the world. For example, Stephen Hawking, he tells he studied the universe, he studied the cosmos, and many of the theories are being mentioned by Stephen Hawking. What did Helen Keller do? Helen Keller has worked as a political activist. She tried for the empowerment of the women, and not only just that, you know this Lions Club, right? So she also encouraged the Lions to treat the people from staying away from blind. That is the reason why Lions Club people have taken up the mission to treat the blind, just because of the inspiration of Helen Keller. She has also motivated the Rotary Club to fight for a leprosy-free India, a world where there is no leprosy. See, that is the reason why the images of these three people are given on the face sheet. Now, my question is, what is your observation? What is your take? You see quite a lot of people around. When you come out of your house or when you go out to the market, you see many people without legs. They are confined to be a mere pauper. They are begging. There are blind people who are stuck to the four walls of the house. Why are they not doing big things? One question that we should put to ourselves is, can anything stop us? If at all there is a disability in us, it could be physical or it could be anything. Can any disability hold us back, push us from what we can be? No, nothing can stop us. And how can you achieve things that you wish to? How can you achieve big things in life? How can you be as confident as Sudha Chandran, as confident as Stephen Hawking, and as confident as Helen Keller? For that, you need to develop your personality. So the very first unit of our 10th class is personality development. So, my dear students, you know the first unit has 3 reading parts. Reading A is attitude, is altitude. Reading part B is every success story is also a story of great failure. And the third reading part C is I will do it. So, what we shall do is, first we shall start with attitude is altitude. So, before we go to our first reading, that is part A, we have an oral discourse. Now, what is oral discourse? We have to brainstorm, and after brainstorming, come up with few ideas on a particular given topic. Now, what is the topic here? Disability is not an obstacle for success, right? So, what is the topic for oral discourse? Disability is not an obstacle for success. Disability is not an obstacle for success. Now, my dear children, I want you to brainstorm on this topic, and after brainstorming, generate few ideas. Try to find appropriate words to convey your ideas, and then give a presentation for 2 to 3 minutes. Now, you may be wondering, sir, how to brainstorm? You said brainstorming, fine, but how to brainstorm? Let us take a simple example. For instance, if I ask you to talk about a flower, orally I have given you a task. What is the task? Talk about a flower. Now, how do you brainstorm? First is, try to define what is a flower. Then, types of flowers. Now, after types of flowers, what are the colors that flowers are available in? Then, what is the kind of fragrance that we get? What is the kind of fragrance that we get from the flowers? Then, where do we use the flowers? What is the lifetime of a flower? How do we cultivate flowers? Are there any quotations that you know about flower? Right? In this way, if you go on thinking, you can generate many ideas. Now, see, I just gave you a simple task. You might have learned this in 9th class or 8th class, but as I told you, to create a better future, we have to work on our present. Let us not worry about our past. If you were a very good student, if you are a very competent student or not, we are not worried about it. Why? If you decide, again your decision, just like Sudha Chandran, just like Stephen Hawking and Helen Keller, if you decide to be a better student today, now if you decide to be a better student, definitely our classes will be of a great help. If you start following the classes from here on, that would suffice to make you a proficient user of English language. So my dear children, this is how you have to generate ideas, whether it be a writing task or an oral discourse. So here, now let us come back to our oral discourse. What are the key words here? Disability. Now, when you are brainstorming, what kind of disability are you talking about? Are you talking about a physical disability? Or are you talking about psychological disability? Right? Are you talking about financial disability? These are all disabilities. We have physical disabilities, we have psychological disabilities, we have financial disabilities, we have cultural disabilities. Of course, there are many kind of disabilities. So, give it a thought. When the question is, disability is not an obstacle for success. You need to elaborate this idea. So, what will you do first? You will talk about one point or one line each about one kind of disability. Or if you think that no sir, I'll only take up physical disability, I'll only take up psychological disability, that's up to you. But this is how you should start your thought process. Now, after knowing what is a disability, okay, then the other two keywords here are obstacle and success. Now, what is the meaning of obstacle? See, we can learn vocabulary also here. The meaning of obstacle is hindrance, impediment, barrier, hurdle. See, within a second I could come up with so many synonyms. What is the meaning of obstacle? The one common word, sir, these all words are difficult for us. I don't know what hindrance is, I don't know what impediment is, I don't know what barrier is, I don't know what hurdle is. Don't worry. My intention is to introduce this word to you. At least you heard it today. Now you will slowly learn it. So what is the meaning of obstacle? The common and simple word for obstacle is difficulty. Okay? So disability is not an obstacle, is not a difficulty which can stop you from success. For you to be successful, disability can't stop, disability can't create difficulties for you to be successful. Now, what is the third keyword? Success. Now, how do you define success? What is success to you? So, my dear students, if you can develop a proper understanding of these three keywords, naturally ideas will start to flow. You can come up with a pool of thoughts. From that pool of thoughts, you can pick the best and you can present. You can deliver a speech. Okay? So, giving oral discourses is not difficult. And more importantly, when you give an oral discourse, please mark my words, the most important thing to consider is what you speak is not important. How you speak is important. I repeat, in oral discourse, what you speak is not as important as how you speak. In our further classes, we can leisurely take examples for this, right? But for now, let us continue with our lesson. So, my dear students, I want every one of you to pay attention, give it a thought, brainstorm. Don't tell me that, sir, I couldn't come up with the ideas. Why? Now you know how to think. Okay, I am not telling you what to think. I just told you how to think. What you think is still up to you, right? Now, so I want every one of you to prepare an oral discourse for 2 to 3 minutes or 5 minutes on the given quotation, that is, disability is not an obstacle for success. Okay, I'm sure that you will definitely come up with wonderful thoughts and ideas in your oral discourse. Now let us start with our first unit. And what is our first unit? Attitude is altitude. My dear students, no matter what subject you are learning or no matter what aspect of your life it is, always ask three magical questions. And what are those three magical questions? The three magical questions are what, why, and how. Whenever you are learning a new concept, whenever you are taking a decision, please ask these three magical questions. What, why, and how. What is attitude? Why do we need to have a wonderful attitude? And how can I develop a good attitude? But before going to that, now, as I told you in paper 1, now let us come to a little examination point of view. In the first part, the first 15 marks are for reading comprehension, right? And then after reading comprehension, we have a passage wherein a paragraph will be given and one sentence will be there which is marked with a number and it will have a mistake in it. We have to correct it. That is, we have to edit that sentence. Correction of sentences, we can also call it as, or editing the paragraph. And then the third paragraph, that is for 2.5 marks, do as directed. We have a paragraph for 2.5 marks, do as directed. In that question, we will be asked to change the parts of speech of a word. Or they may also ask us to write the proper form of the given word. Now, how to change the parts of speech of a word? I know traditionally we have been learning that parts of speech. Whenever we say noun, noun is a name. Then what is a pronoun? Pronoun is used in the place of noun. What's an adjective? That which describes. What is an adverb? That which describes an adjective. Verb and adverb is called as an adverb. What is verb? Verb is the action done by the noun or pronoun. This is how we have learned. But my dear students, now I am going to give you a small technique and a quick technique to learn vocabulary and to identify the parts of speech and to change the parts of speech. How do you change the parts of speech? For example, let us look at this word attitude and look at this word altitude. What are these two words? Attitude. Let me write it again. Attitude. Then we have altitude, then we have solitude, then we have gratitude, then we have magnitude. Now, please don't worry whether you know the meaning of all these words or not. No, we are not learning the meanings of these words. Stick to the point. What's the point? Changing the parts of speech of the word. How to change the parts of speech of the word? Suffixes always help us to change the parts of speech of a word. Now, what is a suffix? When I said suffix, what is a suffix? Suffix is the syllable that comes at the end of a word. Prefix comes in the beginning of the word. Suffix comes at the end of the word. And what do suffixes help us? Suffixes help us to know parts of speech of a given word. Suffixes help us to know the parts of speech of a given word. So now what is attitude? What is altitude? Even if you don't know the meaning of these words, you can simply say that these two are nouns. How do you know that these are nouns? In English language, any word, most proportion of the words, any word that ends with U-D-E is a noun. Okay, look at all these words, they are all ending with U-D-E, U-D-E, U-D-E. Attitude, altitude, solitude, gratitude, magnitude, fortitude. So all these words are ending with U-D-E. So a U-D-E word ending with U-D-E is noun. So how to change this noun? Now, my dear children, when I go to see, this is simply, we have learned one new thing. What's that one new thing that we have learned? Identification of the parts of speech can be done by looking at the suffix. Now, what suffixes nouns carry, what suffixes adjectives carry, what suffixes verbs carry, that we shall learn in the grammar part. Now, let us come back to our reading part. Okay, we are only doing reading here. This is just for your understanding, I have mentioned. Okay, so now what is attitude? How do you describe attitude? Attitude is the perspective. Attitude is also the way of thinking. Attitude is also the way we pursue the world, perception of our world. See, we can come up with many meanings. Most of the time when I ask students what is attitude, immediate answer that I get is behavior. Most of the students, they answer attitude to be behavior. But no, my dear students, attitude is not behavior. Of course, attitude influences behavior, but attitude is not behavior. What is attitude? Attitude is the way you think, the way you pursue the world, the kind of understanding that you have. For example, now let us look at this black. Now what is the attitude? When I say black, everybody thinks of color, and of course I am also referring to color. So when I say black color, many people think that, oh sir, black color is a very bad omen. Black is a symbol of lamenting. Black is a symbol of death, right? But again, black is also a symbol of knowledge. Why? Because blackboard. Every great man is created by a teacher, and every teacher needs a blackboard. What is attitude? Attitude is the way we look at the world. And please try to understand, no two people in this world will try to look at the world alike. Please understand once again, no two people in this world would try to look at the world alike. Different people have different perspective. So our attitudes are different. Now what is altitude? We have studied in our social studies that as altitude increases, temperature decreases. So what is altitude? Height. So the title, understanding the title is very important. We are trying to understand the title. Attitude is altitude. So how can you understand this title? How high you go in life is decided by one factor. What is that? Attitude. No matter you may be hardworking, no matter you are talented, you are smart, you are ambitious, you are agile, you are very collaborative, you are very communicative, you are very industrious. In spite of possessing all these qualities, if you lack in this one quality, it's not easy to be successful. All successful people have great attitude. So my dear students, it is our attitude that is going to decide how high we go in our life, not where we are born, whether we are born in a rich family or a poor family, whether we are brought up in a great conducive environment or an environment where you have to come across many challenges and troubles. These things are not going to dictate your success rate. How high you go in life is decided by your attitude. Attitude is altitude. Okay, now I'm sure that you understood the word attitude, that is the way we look at the world and how it is going to decide the success. In this attitude is altitude, we are going to learn an excerpt, a small piece of life of Nick Vujicic. Who's that? Nick Vujicic. Now, my dear students, what I am going to do is, because you should be familiar with our pedagogical methods. First, I am going to do this part A reading. But today, I recommend you to read this. go for one reading, okay? And after you read it, the second reading will be done by me. I shall do the second reading. That is, we will read the same lesson. Attitude is altitude in the class. I shall read it. And I have done this before. It only takes 9 minutes of time. When you read silently, you try to understand it. But when I read it, you will focus on the pronunciation, the new words that you come across, the articulation, the pauses, the stops, all these things you will observe when I am reading. Then after the second reading is also done, then the explanatory part will be done. Okay. So, without any further delay, I would like to go for the reading. I want every one of you to, and please follow me in reading. Attitude is altitude. But before I go for further reading, I want every one of you to understand, sir, after this reading part, what are we going to do? What are we going to learn? Everything that we read or everything that we listen will definitely be imprinted on our mind. So, here we are given the life of a great personality, Nick Vujicic, who had a great disability in his life. Despite his great disability, he did not succumb. He did not accept himself as a great failure, but he vanquished his disability. He overcame his disability and went on to become a successful man. How he did that? We shall learn it. Okay. So, now, this is only for understanding, appreciation. Imagine having no arms to stretch in the morning to help you scratch that itch, to allow you to wrap your arms around your loved ones. Imagine having no legs to kick pebbles down the street, to walk or run, to bicycle or skateboard, or get you from point A to point B. Then imagine both at once, which is what Nick Vujicic has faced in his whole life. Have you heard something like this before? Nick Vujicic was born with no arms and legs, but he doesn't let the details stop him. The brave 26-year-old, who is mainly a torso, plays football and golf, swims and surfs, despite having no limbs. Nick has a small foot on his left hip which helps him balance and enables him to kick. He uses his one foot to type, write with a pen and pick things up between his toes. I call it my chicken drumstick, joked Nick, who was born in Melbourne, Australia, but now lives in Los Angeles. I'd be lost without it. Due to his faith as an evangelical Christian, Nick has chosen to remain a virgin until marriage. He is very modest, but he gets marriage proposals from women all the time, said Nick's friend and publicist Steve Apple from Los Angeles. He would love to get married and start a family, but he is waiting for the right girl to come along. Now, this part, let us do this reading part in 3 sessions, right? Whatever I did is the first reading. Attitude is altitude. This lesson will be broken into 3 or 4 reading units. Now, let us try to discuss. What have we learnt? As I already told you, sir, the 10th class syllabus is designed assuming that you have been learning English for the past 9 years. So, if you expect me to explain each and every word, that would be a great hindrance. That would be a great obstacle in your learning of language. Don't expect that. Instead, I know for sure, when I did the first reading, at least you are able to understand 50 to 60% of what I read. Now, what we didn't understand, we'll put it to discussion and try to understand. So, what did we learn about this? The first paragraph tells us to empathize. Imagine. Why is he asking us to imagine? So that we too can know how it feels to be. Right. So there are certain schools where the children on Saturdays or once in a year, they are made to live the life of a disabled person. Why? Only to train the children to empathize, to understand how the people with disabilities feel. Certain schools do this. Isn't that great? Okay. For now, let us imagine, and you know for sure, it's really horrible to imagine to live with disabilities. Really, we are all blessed that we have everything in order. So imagine you don't have hands to scratch, right? The carnal desires, the simple of the bodily desires. What is that? To scratch and itch. How good it feels to scratch and itch. You can do that only when you have hands. Imagine you don't have hands to scratch and itch. And what else he does ask to imagine? Imagine you don't have arms to throw around your loved ones. Touch is the best way that we express our love. So we hug people, of course not in the times of Corona, but earlier people used to hug around. So imagine, sir, if you don't have hands to hug your loved ones, to scratch the basic itch, and you don't have legs to play, whether it be football or any other game, right? If you don't have legs, you can't move from one place to other place. If you don't have hands, you can't throw pebbles just idling, just to kill the time, just to pass the time. We throw pebbles here and there. But if you don't have hands, you can't throw pebbles, you can't scratch the itch, you can't love the hugged ones. And if you don't have legs, you can't play, you can't move around. Can you imagine a life with both of them, having no legs and having no hands? Isn't that terrible? But my dear students, the person who had these two difficulties was Nick Vujicic. And that is what his attitude made him a great man. So, how it happened, we will see. Now, the next paragraph. Nick Vujicic was born with no arms and legs, but he doesn't let the details stop him. The brave 26-year-old, who is mainly a torso, plays football and golf, swims and surfs. Now, this is very interesting. What did we learn? We learned that Nick Vujicic was a born torso. Now, what is the meaning of torso? Torso means only the upper part of our body. No limbs. Limbs, you know, hands and legs together are called limbs. Right? So, Nick Vujicic was born a torso. He didn't have his legs or hands. Despite that, the interesting thing is he surfs. You know what is surfing? Yes, surfing is playing on that board on the waves of the sea. Right? So he surfs, he swims. My goodness. To swim we need hands and legs. But Nick Vujicic, being a torso, he swims, he surfs, he plays golf, and he also plays football. So now what is that? We can learn from that. Though he was born a torso, that did not stop him from enjoying his life. That did not preventing him from enjoying the life the way he wants. Nick has a small foot on his left hip, which helps him balance and enables him to kick. He uses his one foot to type, write with a pen and pick things up between his toes. The only thing that Nick Vujicic has is a small foot at his left hip. That small foot helps him do everything. He writes with that. he holds things with that, he swims with that. So that's an amazing thing. Now, being born at Orso, how Nick Vujicic went on to achieve such big things, we will learn in our next class. But for now, my dear students, please understand, I want every one of you to read the entire lesson once, and then tomorrow when we come back to our class, I will do the second reading and the entire lesson will be read. Not like what, this is only a sample video for you. Next day, the entire lesson will be read. To read aloud with necessary pauses and breaks, it will only take 8 minutes, right? Within this 8 minutes, I'll do the oral reading, then we can go for a discussion. And in the discussion, as I already mentioned, we are not going to learn word by word. No, you're already the users of language for past 9 years. So we will have a discussion. It will be a discussion kind of thing. I'll be prompting few questions to which you can answer. Okay, that's how we are going to do this, and then we are going to do the vocabulary part. Before I conclude my class, let me tell you, my dear students, this lesson is going to equip us with at least 30 words to describe a person. So description of the person is very, very important. Whenever we talk, most of our talking is done in the form of description. Either we describe what happened, or we describe an event, we describe a person, we describe a picture. Most of the time in our communication we are describing, and to describe what do we need? We need adjectives. This lesson, attitude is altitude. After the reading part A, we have at least 30 new words which are going to enhance our language. So my dear students, as I already told you, in paper 1 of English, we have seen passages, and the reading comprehension is for 15 marks, and then again we have 15 minutes of discourses, 15 marks of discourses, but 25 marks are exclusively from our textbook lessons. So I want you to be a very voracious reader of the textbook, right? So I hope you had a wonderful time. Don't forget to do the assignment. What is the assignment? In the face sheet, we have seen 3 great personalities: Sudha Chandran, Stephen Hawking and Helen Keller, right? What is common among them? The common factor is, despite the disabilities they had in their life, despite the difficulties they faced in their life, they became successful. And not only they became successful, but they also influenced the lives of others. Now, keeping that or taking that into consideration, look at the world around you, the people you met, the people you have seen, and how the people have achieved things or stopped from achieving things. Prepare an oral discourse. And what is the topic of our oral discourse? Disability is not an obstacle for success. How to brainstorm the ideas? I have mentioned you, right? So generate ideas, prepare an oral discourse, and then also we have learnt a little about attitude is altitude, right? Once we finish with the reading, I have few more details to talk about attitude, right? How many types of attitudes are there? What is optimism? What is pessimism? All these things we can discuss, but only for a short snap of time. Okay, so my dear students, remember, your attitude decides your altitude. How high we go in our life is decided by what kind of mindset we have. So this year, through these classes and through studying the world around, let us try to develop a wonderful attitude. I hope you all enjoyed listening to this class, observing this class, and I am sure that every one of you will do the oral discourse assignment. Until I see you again, take very good care of yourself. Thank you so much. Thank you.